Who are these people? That's a question to be asked both reasonably and calmly, and also perhaps shouted in wide eyed disbelief. When it comes to the reasonable and calm approach, I like to look occasionally at what the mass media is saying and broadcasting, just to see what we're supposed to know, what we are invited to think. And given the source, ideas it's presumably deemed okay for us to know, even supposedly good for us to know. It was reported on the 24th of January that Ukraine peace talks in Abu Dhabi were, in President Zelensky's opinion, constructive. Represented there in that place were Ukraine, Russia, and the United States of America for what they call trilateral peace talks. On his X account, Zelensky wrote, "All sides agreed to report back in their capitals on each aspect of the negotiations and to coordinate further steps with their leaders. A lot was discussed, and it is important that the conversations were constructive. Provided there is readiness to move forward and Ukraine is ready, further meetings will take place potentially as early as next week." End quote. Okay, so far, so calm and reasonable. But let's ask, which individuals were there? Well, we are told the talks brought together senior military and intelligence officials. Ukraine's delegation included Defence Minister Rustem Umarov and Military Intelligence Chief Kirillov Budanov. Russia was represented by members of its armed forces and military intelligence, and the US delegation included President Donald Trump's envoy, Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and senior White House advisors. So, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Who is Steve Witkoff? What could be more calm and reasonable than to look up his Wikipedia page for a start? We are certainly invited to see Wikipedia as what Jacinda Ardern of New Zealand might have called a source of truth. So, here is Wikipedia on Steve Witkoff. Stephen Charles Witkoff, born March 15, 1957, is an American real estate developer, investor, and founder of the Witkoff Group. Since 2025, Witkoff has served as the United States Special Envoy to the Middle East and Special Envoy for Peace Missions. He has also acted as a de facto envoy to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Okay. Real estate developer and special envoy to the Middle East, de facto envoy to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Okay. Now Jared Kushner from the same source. Jared Corey Kushner, born January 10th, 1981, is an American businessman and investor. He is the son-in-law of the President of the United States, Donald Trump, through his marriage to Ivanka Trump, and served as a senior advisor in his father-in-law's first administration from 2017 to 2021. He was also director of the Office of American Innovation. The same page says, Jared met Ivanka Trump around 2005 and the couple married in 2009. He also became involved in the newspaper industry after purchasing the New York Observer in 2006. He was registered as a Democrat and donated to Democratic politicians for much of his life, but registered as independent in 2009 and eventually as Republican in 2018. He played a significant role in the Donald Trump 2016 presidential campaign and was at one point seen as its de facto campaign manager. For much of his career, Kushner worked as a real estate investor in New York City, especially through the family business Kushner Companies. He took over the company after his father, Charles Kushner, was convicted of 18 criminal charges, including illegal campaign contributions, tax evasion, and witness tampering in 2005, although Charles was pardoned by Trump in 2020. Interesting. Let's click on Charles Kushner's blue link on Wikipedia. We read, on June 30th, 2004, Kushner was fined $508,000 by the Federal Election Commission for contributing to Democratic political campaigns in the names of his partnerships when he lacked authorization to do so. In 2005, following an investigation by United States Attorney for the District of New Jersey, Chris Christie, negotiated a plea agreement with him under which Kushner pleaded guilty to 18 counts of illegal campaign contributions, tax evasion, and witness tampering. The witness tampering charge arose from Kushner's retaliation against William Shoulder, his sister Esther's husband, who was cooperating with federal investigators against Kushner. Kushner hired a prostitute to seduce his brother-in-law, arranging to record a sexual encounter between the two and send the tape to his sister. He was sentenced to 2 years in prison and served 14 months at federal prison camp Montgomery in Alabama before being sent to a halfway house in Newark, New Jersey to complete his sentence. He was released from prison on August 25, 2006. As a convicted felon, Charles Kushner was also disbarred and prohibited from practicing law in New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. Republican Chris Christie, who chaired Trump's first transition team, said Kushner committed, quote, one of the most loathsome, disgusting crimes he prosecuted. On December 23, 2020, President Trump issued a full and unconditional pardon to Kushner, his daughter's father-in-law, citing his record of reform and charity. Charles Kushner has subsequently been made by Trump US ambassador to France. So, all of this is out there, on the familiar, freely sanctioned pages on the internet. Anyone asking the question, who are these people, would find those references in seconds. A reasonable person might say that having scrutinised, if only superficially, and from a single source, those two men, that I should look into the lives of everyone else involved at the moment. I may do that, but in the first instance, I freely admit I'm interested in looking at what you might call the home team, being the Americans, and America being, we are told, our most important ally and friend. When it comes to Charles Kushner, a reasonable person might say he has done his time and that people can change, that as nominally Christian nations we are obliged to forgive. I'm all for forgiveness, but I certainly don't think forgiveness must necessarily lead to promotion to high office. We're often told to forgive and forget, but for me, the forgetting part is lunacy. Forgive by all means, but always remember. It is by remembering that we are less likely to be taken by surprise or let down by an individual in the future. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me, and all that. At Davos last week, Jared Kushner gave a presentation about his plans for New Gaza, the new Gaza to replace the old Gaza that's been pounded into rubble and which is peppered liberally with the blood and bones of the dead. This is Project Sunrise. I couldn't help noticing that the slide Kushner showed of the proposed New Gaza suggested to me the shape of a handgun aimed towards the right. But that's just me, a flippant comment. Here's a few moments of Jared's presentation available on YouTube.
Every time your phone connects to public Wi-Fi, anyone nearby could snoop on what you're doing. Hackers can steal your information, passwords, photos, and bank details in just seconds. ExpressVPN encrypts your connection, making it virtually impossible for hackers to access your personal information. ExpressVPN is so easy to use. With just one click of a button, you're protected. Streaming, banking, or shopping, you can switch between high-speed servers worldwide in seconds, and your connection never slows down. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code to get up to 75% off, plus 4 extra months free, all backed by a 30-day money-back guarantee. Protect your online life today.
It was just over 100 days ago that we got the final deal done, and everyone was celebrating and joyous about the hostages coming home and the end to this long war that nobody thought was possible. And Steve and I were panicking, saying, what do we do next? How do you implement peace? And as you guys know, peace is a different deal than a business deal because you're changing a mindset. We want to use free market economy principles. A lot of what President Trump spoke about that he's doing in America, we want to bring the same mindset and the same approach to a place like Gaza to give these people the ability to thrive and have a good life. And we've developed ways to redevelop Gaza. Gaza, as President Trump's been saying, has amazing potential, and this is for the people of Gaza. We've developed it into zones. In the beginning, we were toying with the idea of saying, let's build a free zone, and then we have a Hamas zone. And then we said, you know what, let's just plan for catastrophic success. Hamas signed a deal to demilitarize. That is what we are going to enforce. Rafah will start with. This will show a lot of workforce housing. We think this could be done in 2-3 years. We've already started removing the rubble and doing some of the demolition. And then New Gaza. It could be a hope, it could be a destination, have a lot of industry. From the private sector, there'll be amazing investment opportunities. I know it's a little risky to be investing in a place like this, but we need you to come, take faith, invest in the people.
Catastrophic success, he says. It's an interesting choice of words. Catastrophic is from the Greek katastrophein and means to overturn, turn down, trample on, to come to an end. I'm appalled by the speed at which luxury and high-tech is being proposed to smother the scene of mass slaughter. It seems to me that while the smell of the burning flesh of their loved ones is still in their nostrils, the survivors are being invited to contemplate living in what I would call ghettos set aside for them in the shadow of luxury hotels and places of billionaire business. Is it just me, or does this remind anyone else who's seen the movies of the ethos of the Hunger Games? New Rafah, new Gaza, the blunt statement that corporations are already clearing the rubble to make way for new. Let's remember that the rubble contains the shallow graves of unknown numbers of the oh-so-recently dead. The people of Gaza, as Jared Kushner describes them, are being invited to live on top of that. That horrifies me, but that's just me. It's all being done under the guise and auspices of what President Donald Trump is calling the Board of Peace. Former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, who was behind the lies about weapons of mass destruction and the so-called war on terror that left over 1 million dead in Iraq and thereabouts, is among the board's members. Here are the countries that have accepted places on the Board of Peace so far: Argentina, Albania, Armenia, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Belarus, Bulgaria, Egypt, Hungary, Israel, Indonesia, Jordan, Kazakhstan, Kosovo, Morocco, Mongolia, Pakistan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates. What is this Board of Peace? Is it, I ask, the new Trump-inspired replacement for what we learned to call the United Nations? Let's remember the United Nations succeeded something else, which was the League of Nations, formed after World War I, and which the United States shunned on account of popular US desire at that time to keep out of what were called foreign entanglements. The League of Nations was preceded by something called the League to Enforce Peace. Everyone's forgotten that one. To enforce peace. Even US President Woodrow Wilson, a puppet president, I would say, whose strings were pulled at all times by the figure of one Edward Mandell House, called Colonel House, although he never achieved such a rank. Even Wilson balked at such a name, and so it was renamed the League of Nations. The Board of Peace is openly about giving investors the power to govern places if they pay up front to build them. It's about putting the boards of transnational companies and corporations and hedge funds and the like in charge of territories without the hindrance of anything like democracy. In 16th century South America, the Spanish conquerors set in place a system called encomienda, whereby the King of Spain entitled himself to make aristocrats little kings of Spanish territories there. The little king was given the right to demand the labour of the people living there, putting them in circumstances really little better than slavery. The thinking of the Board of Peace sounds similar to encomienda to me. You pay for it, you own it. You can do what you like with it. So who are these people? Well, we're looking at rich people buying the power to govern. We're looking at people we have no say over, far less any power to be rid of. At Davos, Trump and co. insisted globalism had failed, that globalism was over. Maybe, but globalism has already transferred all the money to the billionaires now preaching about how outsourcing jobs made Americans and Europeans poor. That has happened. That has been achieved. Europe has been deindustrialized. The power has been taken away from Europe in every meaningful sense. And all the while, the rich simply got richer. So where are we? We have been shown and are being shown that the rules-based order, international law, was a fiction, and that the powerful will just take what they want from whomever they want, just as they always have. It's happening right in front of us. It's happening right under our noses. As far as I'm concerned, this is the reality of the one world government they still keep telling us is only a conspiracy theory. Thanks for watching. If you've enjoyed this content, please click and put the tick on it. If you haven't already done so, go to the App Store maybe and download the GB News app.